Welcome to Making Pondo and Talking Pondo. Talking Pondo is a podcast where we pick out 2 movies each week and talk about them in detail. Making Pondo is a podcast where we talk to people we've made films with and we discuss all their experiences on set.
All right, Marty, here we are.
Hello.
Welcome back.
Welcome to Talking Pondo.
That's right. The podcast where Marty and I force each other to watch movies and we talk about them and
Yes.
decide whether we like them and rank them based on a 5-star system.
We do a sister show, I guess you would call Making Pondo, where you would think that would be called Talking Pondo because we're talking about ourselves making Pondo, but then it would be making Pondo, and it just gets too meta and confusing at that point. But
yeah,
so
but if you're,
oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was gonna say if you're listening at this point, you've probably realized that you're gonna get some making, some talking, some making.
Yes. So we do
this week. It's talking.
Yeah, well, this week it's talking where we seem to have settled on a 5-star rating scale, right?
Right. Yep.
Now, for me, I've decided, but of course this can all change. For myself, I was going to stick to the 5. I'm not going to do any halves because doing halves kind of makes it a 10-point rating scale in a way, right? But
I like halves. I like halves. I think we should do halves. No.
So
no
should
halves?
I want us to be in sync. So should I introduce?
Yeah, we should be in sync. So if you're not going to do halves, either I shouldn't do halves or you should do halves. If I'm going to do halves, we should agree on this.
So let's look at it kind of like at that 10-point rating scale in a way where, I mean, we still use 5 stars but by introducing the halves, it's basically.
Well, I think 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I mean, I could get with that. Let's if you want to do a 5-star with no grades, that way you really have to kind of make a decision.
That's why some of mine have come off a little harsh, right? Because I grade it down because I hear you in the middle,
Yeah. Okay. Well, what do you think? 5 stars?
I lean more towards the halves anyway, but I was just trying to see if I could make myself more, I don't know, rigid or disciplined with it. But because it's so easy to say, 2.5 stars, But I don't know. I guess we'll just play it by ear, right? If you feel like throwing a half in, throw a half in.
All right. And yeah, you should feel free to throw the halves in at this point. Let's put it that way. Yeah. Don't rigidly stick to your 5-star system.
Because it's like, what is all this weird way to start off? But I guess it really does fit in well with the 2 movies that we're talking about this week. The 2 halves of see what we did there of movies about being in ships, right?
Ships, yes.
You're either they paired well. I thought.
You're right. They are about people away from society on their own in kind of perilous situations. Nobody's going to come help you. You're cut off from everything, so you're that type of thing. And yes, I guess the drilling station in the Abyss could be considered a ship, at least, especially the little submersibles that they ran around in were definitely little ships.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, so we had Dark Star and we had the Abyss.
Mm-hmm.
Yes,
we did. And
yes, we did.
We watched the theatrical version of the Abyss, the 2.5-hour version.
Yes.
And we watched the theatrical version of Dark Star, which is the 83-minute version. And it's weird because both of these movies have alternate cuts, right? The Abyss has this almost 3-hour special edition, while as Dark Star's director's cut is only a little over an hour.
Wow.
Because I don't know if you looked at the Wikipedia on either of these movies. I kind of went down that rabbit hole a little bit. I guess Dark Star was a student film that they shot parts of in 70 through like 73. I'm thinking it was, and then
was that with Dan O'Bannon?
Yeah,
it makes sense.
And so then the distributor's like, well, if you add an extra however many minutes, we can put it out. And so when they made the director's cut for video, they cut out all the stuff the distributor had them add. But I wanted to watch the one that played in theaters because that way we're talking about all that missing stuff, which is weird because we didn't see the missing stuff in the Abyss. But I went down the rabbit hole and read about what was added in that
Well,
version too, so I got an
I
idea of that one.
I've seen the 3 hour version, and I'm glad that we watched the 2.5 hour version. There's some stuff in the yeah, we'll get to that, but yeah, there's some stuff in the 3 hour version where I was just like, I get why you added it, but you didn't need it. So I also
Mm-hmm.
get why you removed it. You know. So which one do you want to talk about first? You want to talk
Oh,
about Darkstar first, or
that's what I was about to ask you. Which one should we
let's
venture
do
into
Darkstar?
first? Okay,
Yeah,
that is
let's
the
do
one I
Darkstar.
watched first. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so so first off, this movie right away, I know it's a student film. I know it's Carpenter's first film, but right away you, you know what you're in for because it starts with this monologue with a guy who's obviously reading his lines off a cue card, and just where you're just like, oh, okay, here's your excuse for all these vignettes you're about to watch. Here it comes. Um, like a I don't know, like a scientific version of the groove tube,
That's what one of
right?
my notes reminds me of the Groove Tube. I have it right there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. So the movie. So basically, the movie is about just real very shortly. The movie is about these 4 guys. They're astronauts in the future. They're on a ship called the Dark Star that travels around the galaxy, testing planets to see if they're going to fall out of orbit and eventually fall into a sun and create a supernova, and they blow the planet up. I guess in an effort to kind of keep the galaxy clean or whatever. I don't know what they never really explain why they're doing it. They just
Mm.
that's what they're doing. Um, and so as that's happening, weirdly, like the ship's falling apart, and they're reporting back that the ship's falling apart, and there's an alien on board, and all these weird things are happening, but nobody seems to care. Like nobody does anything positive throughout the movie to try and fix anything
Right.
until it's almost about to die, and then suddenly people care,
Yeah.
right? Like it's a weird movie. Darkstar's
To
a
say the
it,
least, right?
yeah, it's a very weird movie.
That
Um,
the extra those parts with that alien, I think that's all some of the stuff the distributor had them add
I mean
later. Like you
that
can see
completely
where the
makes sense.
beards don't match and shit. Yeah.
That completely makes sense because it's an entire just like kind
Mm-hmm.
of out of it, it's
Yeah.
completely out of context for the rest of the film, and it's
Like the
really
Killer
dumb.
Tomatoes thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really dumb. It's really dumb. It's really dumb.
Mm-hmm.
I
It is
yeah.
interesting where you're like, I'm trying to see, is there any hint of what was to come from Carpenter in this? And I mean, if you squint, maybe in a few shots, but it just goes to show, well, you got to start somewhere. And it's so weird that a student film nowadays you'd never see this, but then it was film, right? And money was spent, and so they kept adding and adding, and eventually they put the fucking thing
Mhm.
out. I guess the distributor made more money after the fact of Halloween and Alien because they were like, oh, the crazy outer space spoof from the makers of
Oh
Halloween and
sure.
Alien.
Yeah.
And they made
Yeah.
some money on VHS in the 80s off of it, while as
Yeah.
otherwise it's like almost borderline public access
Yeah,
quality.
it's Doctor Who PBS in the late 70s.
Yeah.
It's I mean they do a decent job. One of my notes I have is that they're very smart. Like they kind of like us in certain instances. You look at a location and you just look at it and go, this is where we're filming. How are we going to use it?
Mm-hmm.
And so okay, well we'll block the light here. We'll make this here. We'll shoot really close here so that none of this other stuff shows. And they end up like at one point you can see they're in some sort of like area with just air ducts, right? Like you can see ductwork, but at least they shot it with enough low light and tight enough that it sells, it works. You know what I mean? And I think that's where Carpenter's effort comes in, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
he's making these small. He's very good at making a small amount of money work and look big. Always has been. And also the music, since he did the music, you get a lot of that. This is the same guy who did dun 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 for
Hmm.
Halloween, right? Like to create the dread and the suspense, and he does that throughout, especially
Yeah.
later when when the alien turns and is going after him. There's a lot of dread. There's a lot of music that creates time and a sense of dread and tension that feels
Hmm.
very early Carpenter. Like I was like, oh, that's okay. You can really see him working on that there.
That's where this movie sits in my memory alongside THX 1138 because it's this post 2001 but pre Star Wars world of sci-fi. Like
Yeah,
we haven't hit
Barbarella
that
and
last
yeah.
part yet, so you're eating this weird early 70s.
Hmm.
It's out there.
So I mean, there's some interesting stuff. Like I thought that making that, this is early on in the idea of a smart bomb that actually talks and
Oh yeah,
agrees to disarm itself and go
the
back
AI.
into the ship was pretty smart. That was funny and also kind of, weirdly, you know, now in funny. I just anyway, that commentary is still valid today. I
Hmm.
guess was the thing I found funny about it.
Yeah,
Um,
when it was a short film and it focused just on that, it probably worked a little tighter.
Sure, sure, exactly. And honestly, paring it away, getting rid of most of the crap,
Hmm.
getting rid of all this sitting in the thing. I was a surfer, man. I used to surf. It's just like, my God, how long is this scene going to go on? You're just droning on and on. Why aren't the two of you smoking weed? That's what's missing from this.
Right,
Is
right.
everybody just smoking weed because that's the reason nobody cares about the ship falling apart, and that's the reason they talk. You know, it would have covered basically one of the things I have is the acting is rough. I mean, the
Oh,
acting is so rough. It's just and the cast is just super unattractive. That is a bunch of dudes who have not groomed anything at all in a while. It's just rough. By the way, Nick Castle was assistant camera
oh
on
yeah,
this.
isn't that bizarre?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
So
yeah.
yeah.
Right.
So hold that thought into your head for the time being.
Hmm.
The Nick Castle connection. So it's like, oh, last Starfighter alert. We've
Yeah.
now looped all the way back to our first film again with the director of The Last Starfighter started as assistant camera operator in this movie years
Hmm.
before he would then play Michael Myers in Halloween.
Exactly. It's crazy. Um, Dan
I think Tommy Lee
O'Bannon is
Wallace worked on this too. Yeah.
Yeah, Dan O'Bannon is credited in this movie more.
Mhm.
I mean, my God, editor, science, special effects, writer. I mean,
Didn't he,
actor.
didn't he have a hand in heavy metal?
I'm not sure about that.
Because if he did, then there's you're actually getting high in space, building on top of.
Yeah,
But it is weird, like this talent pool, like trying something to start, and it's like, no, you're not supposed to be doing goofy sci-fi. You're supposed to be over here doing horror or weird action, and you basically make Alien. You do slasher in space. We don't have a goofy tomato alien that's trying to make you laugh and the jokes aren't landing.
yeah,
You go, I'm going to turn that into scary instead. And then he
yeah,
hit fucking gold at that point.
yeah.
So,
He wrote Alien and Return of the Living Dead and I mean, a bunch of Alien versus Predator,
hmm,
bunch of stuff. He gets credited. Oh shit, he wrote Blue Thunder.
wow. I
Yeah,
think
he
that's
wrote
part of
this.
your
Yeah,
age list.
He wrote the segment Soft Landing. Yeah, and for heavy metal. Yep.
Well, there you go.
Yeah. He's a good writer. I'm not shitting on his. I
Oh,
hope
but this is
people
just a,
listening don't think I'm shitting on his ability to
no.
write. But this
Everybody
is
knows this movie's a weird
yeah
one.
this
Yeah.
is an early this is early in his career stuff. But
Oh, yeah. This is more
um,
of a examination of the beginning of a career, is why
yeah,
I picked
yeah.
this one more than
It's
the
I mean
quality of
one of my notes is dull, dull, dull. Nothing's happening.
it. You're in space for how long?
I mean, the gags are flat. A rubber chicken, for Christ's sakes. At one point, a
Oh,
rubber
yeah.
chicken. And again, I have to remember this is pre Animal House.
That's true.
So like Animal House is a comedy that literally changes comedies for film forever. So
Hmm.
I mean, I will say they used a lot of color in the film. Like
Mm-hmm.
they gave the film a look different. This will make this whole thing. We'll light it red. We'll light it blue. We'll light it green. We'll light it this way. We'll light it that way.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but it's the dialogue is just boring and it's
Oh
not
yeah, yeah.
funny. It's not funny.
No, that's
It's
one of the things on Wikipedia is like they realized that it was not funny, it was not playing. That's why they decided to go horror instead of being
Yeah.
comedians.
He made a great I mean, he made a great transition. And comedy and horror are basically the same thing. It's just one
Mm-hmm.
works. One is when you're laughing, and one is when you're
Yep,
not.
yep. And I, I'm sure you've seen some of those early unreleased Raimi shorts, like
Hmm.
those, and so some of this almost kind of gave me some of those vibes in a way, or almost like Trauma, kind of like, oh, this
I
is
mean,
so fucking bargain based
I mean,
as
we
far
can
as tonal goes,
we can point to stuff that we didn't even release that was way worse than this. I mean, uh,
I also
yeah. So,
like that it
go ahead.
has the concept of outer space being kind of dirty.
Hmm.
That's a little novel in movies at that point, right? Because we've mostly had like the 50s,
Yeah.
everything squeaky clean in
Everything's
space.
squeaky clean.
This
Yeah.
is kind of like in that pre-Star Wars, and yet everything's like, yeah,
Little
that's
grungy and
gross.
beat up. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I have a note here that says I'm 30 minutes in and it feels like an hour, and that's a really good thing. Like that whole movie. I mean,
Well,
it's
I had to
80
break
minutes,
it up.
83 minutes long. It felt like 2 hours.
Yeah.
I couldn't break it up. I couldn't walk away from it and start it again. I had to gut it out.
Oh, wow.
I just
Wow.
had to gut it out. Carpenter's laying out a lot of his style, though. I mean, the music and the sound and all that. I felt like
Hmm.
there was some Carpenter in there. You could feel it, especially later in the movie. And that's one of the things I'll say about the movie. Weirdly, it gets to the third act and it kind of picks up.
Hmm.
Like the first act's kind of second
Progress
act is
out of the added stuff. Yeah.
all that monster stuff and all that
Hmm.
getting high in the bubble, and then suddenly in third act it's like, oh, okay, the ship's going to blow up, things need to happen, I'm going to out
Hmm.
logic the AI. That's classic.
We found our
um
story.
yeah. Yeah.
Uh, the Raimi movie it reminded me of is Crime Wave, his second movie that doesn't really work, and so it
Yeah.
has kind of that like you're trying, but it's not really there yet.
Hmm.
But I will say
Hmm.
this: fashion has come full circle
Yeah.
because I can walk down the street and see people that look like the
Yeah.
cast of
You're
Dark Star
absolutely
now,
right. You're
and
absolutely
while
right. Yeah.
while I was in between, it was like no, 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 that style went away, and now it's back.
That's a note to you unkempt sons of bitches. Get your beards and your hair trimmed. Jesus Christ. You look like hippies. At one point, I really hated this monster stuff with the monster chasing the dude and
Right.
this whole thing. And at one point, he's just hanging from this elevator,
Yeah.
and he's just like, "Oh, I'll just undo these screws with one hand. No problem,
Mm-hmm.
and I'll just lift myself through." But I'm so fat I can't fit through the hatch. Hilarious. It's not it's not funny.
Yeah. It doesn't
It's just
work. Yeah.
no. No, it was like watching comic book diaries at
Well,
certain
in that kind of
points, man.
way, right? Yeah. It made me
Oh,
feel not so alone in the world when I see that other people have suffered through similar.
yeah. Yeah. I
I
have a
think
note
I
here
was
that says,
just kind of zoning out watching parts of the movie like that, where it's just kind of like, oh, what happened? And then
yeah,
I'd snap back in when like the bomb was,
yeah,
it's hard
yeah.
to pay attention to.
It is. I have a note here that says I hate Pinback, and I do. And then another note that says, what the fuck am I watching?
Mm-hmm.
Sound effects is the best part of that movie. Whoever did the Foley and the sound effects, they made that movie actually watch. Like
Mm-hmm.
they brought everything together and actually that was the glue that held the whole movie together. The dude with the spacesuit, he had a 6'10" muffin tin on the front of his suit. It was a baking tin for making muffins.
Oh, what do they call that
Yeah,
when you're grabbing stuff from the thrift store and hot
yeah.
gluing it to a thing and you make Star Wars Death Star trenches out of it?
Do you know the Muffin Man?
I forget the word for that right now.
Oh, what is? Yeah, there's a word for it.
Kit bashing.
Yeah, kid bashing. Also, so
That's
they never explain why the crew doesn't give a shit.
oh right, yeah, they're just yeah.
You know,
Well,
no
maybe
repairs, no malfunctions. You know,
maybe if we were there in 1970, we'd understand why the crew doesn't give a shit, right? Maybe the context of the time is gone. I don't
maybe.
know. There's something to I feel like there was something like if you were baked at the Student Union Hall in 1971 and they were showing you the 45-minute version of this, it might have been amusing 50 years ago.
The
It's just,
ennui, man, of
it's just weird
space.
how this got released. And I'm sure it's probably not Carpenter's favorite thing in his catalog.
Yeah.
And I bet not many people bother him about it either.
Well, I mean, it's relatively unique. You know, I mean, it's not something that you see a lot of, but
You
it's
know,
you
and
know,
what other sci-fi did he do? He did dip back in. You know, you got They Live a little bit sci-fi. Ghosts of
Starman,
Mars. He's going
Star
totally sci-fi again.
Starman.
Starman. So he does
Yeah.
dip in and out of the genre. A lot of people
Hmm.
like to think of him as just horror, but it is weird where he starts with
Yeah.
sci-fi. And why did we
Yeah.
pick this movie?
Yeah.
Because his name was David Brin, right? He was one of the guests at Tuscon, and he comes up to us singing that song about Benson, Arizona.
I
And he's
know.
all Dark Star, guys, Dark Star. And I'm like, well, I guess that's going into the
Benson,
podcast. So
Arizona. Jesus.
it's
Oh,
the weird
he also
Tuscon
did
connection.
Big Trouble, which I guess is kind of sci-fi,
Yeah, it's got some elements. You're definitely
fantasy,
right.
sci-fi. Yeah.
Fantasy, yeah.
I feel like they owed. I feel like the Midway, the guys, whoever made Mortal Kombat, owes John Carpenter money for Raiden.
Hmm.
I feel like they owe him money for that.
So and once he got up and going, it's like right he made Dark Star, then the original Assault on Precinct 13, and then he got the Halloween,
Hmm.
and it was almost as if he could do no wrong for a decade. He just slamming out hit after hit, and some people argue that his stuff through the '90s is good too. So,
He's kind of like Spielberg,
mm-hmm.
you know, in that where like in the career arc where it was like,
Yeah,
okay, he did, you know, a couple small ones, and then bam, comes out, launches out with Jaws, and then suddenly he's off and running, and
mm-hmm.
he can do no wrong through most of the '80s. He's just crushing it. E.T., Raiders of the Lost Ark, you know,
Wow,
over and over again.
this is pre Jaws.
Yeah, it's pre Jaws,
Wow.
74,
Mm-hmm.
1974. Yeah.
And it's
Um,
also our first rated G movie that we've covered on Making Pondo.
Rated G, really.
Yep.
General audiences. There you go, folks. I feel like nowadays this probably would get a PG,
Mm-hmm.
but maybe not. Maybe I'm wrong. But the cryo thing, where they talk to their dead captain who's in cryostasis, is really creepy, and it's
Mm-hmm.
probably for me the best bit of the whole movie.
Yeah, yeah.
Where it's like that's a really good bit. Like that's something you can build a movie around.
Mm-hmm.
A dead captain who can sort of talk and sort of help you solve your problems as you're navigating this ship through stuff. That's interesting to me.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was pretty good.
So it does seem like you keyed into the best parts of the movie were the parts from the original short, while as the bloated parts were all the tacked on stuff, which is I
Yeah.
can see why the 68-minute version is the director's cut. I did not go
Well,
back and watch the shorter version, but I have an idea that it probably plays a little snappier. You know.
I don't even think much of the early stuff plays super well. Like
Well, that's true
it's
too.
you know
In comparison to the
it's got
deviation
the
of
problem
balloon
look,
monster.
pacing, dialogue. Yeah, it's not a good movie.
No.
Um, I like that he out logics the logic circuits on the bomb. That's a lot of fun.
Mm-hmm.
But then of course that big Deus ex machina at the end, and it's such a long ending.
Yeah.
Um,
We do get some outer space surfing, so at least
yeah,
there's that.
surfing into the planet is like,
Now, now John Carpenter must have a surfing obsession because doesn't Snake Plissken
yeah,
use
he
the
stakes, yeah,
surfboard
and
and Escape
Escape
from
from L.A.
L.A.? See,
Yeah, it's true.
he's just referencing Dark Star, guys.
My last note on this is I did not enjoy that.
No. I think my last note was, if I'm correct here, there's nothing else that I hit. No, I did set all those. Okay. Dan O'Bannon goes on to make Alien,
Mm-hmm.
and then Aliens comes out, and Aliens has that knife game in it
Yep.
where
Yep.
they do that thing, and aren't they doing that in
Yes.
this
Yeah.
movie?
Dark Star. He does it in Dark Star and nicks
Yeah.
himself. Yeah.
So I
Uh-huh.
was like, oh, that's kind of interesting, weird little callback. And
That
and
speaking of real quick, that
mhm.
knife gag in that movie made me think back to Love Song with our knife gag, and I was just like,
Mm.
oh, that's a little too close to home. I don't want anybody
Right.
not allow anybody with knives on my set
And then
anymore.
as an aside, now this is a little bit of a tangent, but uh, the film My Bloody Valentine also has that knife game in it,
Mm.
and it involves a guy who looks a lot like Baylor. He's got the same facial hair and everything, and that movie was made what, like about 6 or 7 years later, and I was just like, oh, that's weird. You got a similar looking '70s dude doing the fucking, he's just staring at the guy, just,
That's hilarious.
and then they got and they, and then basically the bartender tells the Large Marge story, which My Bloody Valentine, probably a much better movie than Dark Star. I have no intention of making you
I
watch
would,
that one
I would,
anytime soon.
I would much rather watch Mighty Bloody. I
It probably would have been the better
still don't know
choice.
why you picked this fucking movie, but
Well, I picked it because
okay.
Duke sang the song to us. That's really the main reason. Where I was
Uh,
like, "Oh, okay." And now at least it's done. The Band-Aid is ripped off. We're not coming around that way again. But we did start off John Carpenter's career, so at least we've seen that movie. Have you ever
True.
seen Dark Star before?
Oh God, yeah. In fact, the first time I saw it was, oh God, it would have been 82 or
Oh
83.
wow.
My grandfather had a VCR. We had gotten a. This is back in the day when you had to that every mom and pop out there had a, had. It's kind of like the weed stores now, where there's 9 million of them everywhere in the
Mm-hmm.
states where they're legal. Um, Sort of the same thing. So it was mom and pop VHS stores. So there was one next to my grandpa's neighborhood. We went over there, and he had to pay for a membership. We was all pissed off about, but he got it. And then we were going through their video stuff, and he's a big sci-fi buff, and took me to every sci-fi movie that came out in the 70s and the 80s when I was a kid. He took me to all of them, all even the weird ones, um, Cherry 2000 and all that type of stuff. Um, Space Hunter in 3D, with the 3D glasses, that type of stuff. So we're looking for something we haven't seen, and I'm like, Dark Star. Have you seen Dark Star? And he's like, Nope, grab it. I was like, okay, and we took it home, and we were just like, both of us, we looked at each other for 80 minutes, going, what is this?
Oh, so even then it played very similar to how it
Oh
played
yeah, it didn't
now.
play well at all. It was we never rented it again ever. To be,
Wow.
it was that was like, oh my god, I don't know what that was, but okay, it was science fiction, I guess, which
Mm-hmm.
is what we were looking for,
Right.
but not
Mm.
really what we were looking for.
See, I'd always read about it, but I couldn't find the copy of it. It was so old that it had fallen off the shelves, and so I didn't see it until the DVD release in the aughts.
Ah,
And
really?
I think I
Wow.
rented
Okay.
it from like Casa Video or somewhere, and it,
Crazy.
yeah. I look back on it now, and it's like, oh, this is when I was absorbing a lot of people's early movies, and like, well, if they can make a crummy movie, we can make a crummy movie. So it's like things like that helped
not,
lead to
not a good
marijuana in a
mantra.
weird sort of way. That was the flashback I had then rewatching it, but also it was kind of the, oh yeah, I feel the exact same way about it now that I did then. It's kind of like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to be going around this way anytime soon. I think just out of the curiosity factor of it and its weird place in film history, I'll say 1.5 stars, which is still too kind in a way. But there's some
Yeah,
weird moments enough that it's just there's nothing else like it, for better or
it's.
worse.
I mean, I feel like what's that show with Simon Pegg or Red Dwarf?
Oh, apparently they were inspired by this, according to Wiki.
Yeah, yeah, I feel like that's very related. Um, yeah, 1.5 is about as good as I can't give it 2 stars.
I think this might be the first movie we have the same rating on.
Yeah, I can't give it 2 stars. It's, I mean, it's almost a one. Um, there's a couple of decent moments in it. I like the arguing with the smart bomb. I like that idea. There's a couple of, I definitely thought that cryo thing with the captain was really
Hmm.
cool, but I had to sit through 80 minutes to get to
Yeah,
it, so it was pretty rough.
yeah.
Um, but
Well,
yeah, so I can't give it one because it at least had a couple of redeeming things, but
but you can't give it a
I,
two.
I can't
See,
give it a two because I'll never
perfect
watch it
argument.
again.
Perfect argument for the half system. It makes total sense.
Yeah, I can't. I can't because I'll never watch it again. Never
No,
will.
no, I'm good.
Yeah, I'm good too. Thank you, John. Appreciate you, buddy.
Hmm. So, how do these
I,
two movies connect? They connect very easily. It's really kind of insane when you think about it. The Kevin Bacon game is so simple because Dark Star goes to Alien, goes to Aliens, goes to the Abyss.
yeah, yeah.
It's really weird how
Mhm.
it connects like that. And also, there are a few trope
I was
overlaps
just gonna
as
say,
well.
I mean, just the idea of again a group of people isolated from society or from help from society. Whether it's on a spaceship or thousands of feet underwater, it's 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 a play kind of.
Hmm.
It's on a soundstage. You're not moving out of that. And yes, you can go into the water. Yes, you can go into space. But again, you're very ah, having trouble with what exactly I'm trying to say here. It's sort of removed from society,
Yes,
from the everyday things of society. So
they're literally in a bubble.
yeah, kind of a oh goodness, Lord of the Flies type thing.
So, while as Dark Star mentioned Benson, Arizona, the Abyss mentions Tucson, Arizona.
Tucson, Arizona. Yep.
Odd Arizona trivia that only I would notice or care about between these two movies, but it's weird when we have these pairings, and so I'm automatically looking for any sort of links. So for some reason, both of these movies are, well, they're talking about the desert. I guess maybe that's 'cause there's nothing there, but it's a desert of water. I think that the Abyss, before we get into what it's about, was the testing ground for techniques Cameron would later perfect in Titanic and Avatar. Like
I,
it's the
I would agree
'80s,
with
and
that.
he's got the audacity, my alternate title for this movie, to try to make a movie like this in the '80s before the technology exists. But what is this movie about?
I mean, the movie, it's you just talk about the movie itself. So the
Yeah,
movie
what's
itself
the
is,
little plot
yes.
summary? I
So the
guess.
movie itself is about a group of what they call deep sea drillers, and I don't know that I don't or underwater drilling basically. And so this woman has created this underwater drilling platform that's movable. It's a submersible rig that can move around. Uh, so it's down there drilling. A uh, a American submarine has an encounter with an underwater alien,
Mhm.
basically, that causes it to malfunction, and it crashes and falls down into very deep water and is trapped down there. And so the government contacts this company that's running this deep sea rig and says, "Hey, would you can we send some Navy SEALs down to you, and would you take them to this? Since you guys are experts in working in all this, deep sea, deep pressure environments, would you take them to this submarine and scout for survivors?" So that's the plot of the movie, basically. And then basically what happens is they get to the submersible. Um, one of the one of the precepts of the Navy SEALs is that they need to search for survivors. They don't find any. A hurricane sets in above them, which causes them to have some trouble keeping power, and because there's a ship on top of the ocean that provides power
Ah, that's
and
what puts
communications
everything into
feeds to the
motion.
submersible, right? Yeah. So the Navy SEALs, so the Army for some reason tells the Navy SEALs, I can't remember exactly why, to go to the sub and retrieve a nuclear warhead. So they do, but while they're doing that, um, they take the one submersible that can unhook the drilling platform from the ship, and because the ship can't keep up with the drilling, it can't stay stationary above the drilling platform. It ends up dragging. It ends up dragging the drilling platform, and then the crane breaks off, and they get separated from the ship and communications, and then suddenly it's just the Navy SEALs and these basically these blue collar drillers who are down there just drilling for oil, all worried about what's going on with each other. Um, and then suddenly the aliens appear, the UTIs, which is what it is. What's a UTI? Something terrestrial intelligence,
Unidentified.
unidentified terrestrial or underwater terrestrial intelligence,
Underwater.
whatever.
See, it works both ways, right?
Yeah, yeah.
I
And
did.
so from there,
Oh, go ahead.
what? So from there, basically the head Navy SEAL guy, he's got pressure sickness, so it's causing him to be paranoid. So he
Oh, is
keeps
that
rat,
what's going on?
yeah,
Okay.
he keeps ratcheting up the problem. They get visited by this alien thing which can manipulate water. It scares the Navy SEAL dude who decides to basically, on his own accord, send this nuclear warhead down armed and blow up these things because he thinks it's the Russians or it's trying to kill America
Right.
or whatever
Yeah.
the hell is in his head. And so they deal with him. He ends up, of course, getting killed. And then they send the lead driller down, Bud, using this new deep dive technology where you basically breathe oxygenated water
Oh,
or
yeah.
oxygenated fluid, um, so that he can go super deep. And he goes super deep and he disarms the bomb. And then at the very end, the aliens find him and they save him. And then they do a giant Deus Ex Machina and bring the well platform and the sub and everything to the surface,
Mm-hmm.
where of course they've controlled the weather and made the hurricane go away.
Mm-hmm.
And then they give everybody a message of peace and tell them to stop fucking
Mm-hmm.
around. And the
Mm-hmm.
movie ends.
And they also made it to where nobody gets the bends or anything from going up real fast.
Right, right.
I'm
No
glad they at
decompression
least
sickness.
addressed that. They're like,
Yeah.
we don't sick or anything or whatever they said.
Mhm.
Uh, now I have so many things to say. Let's start where you just left off. I feel like the Phantom Menace really ripped off a lot of that look of the Jar Jar underwater world where they're swimming.
Uh-huh.
Seeing that,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, it's like
It
they
was
took
very
that
it
concept and
was
just
very
went off
close.
on it
Yeah.
again.
Yeah, it was
And
very close.
watching it again, I've realized I don't think I've actually ever seen this movie all the way through before. I've
Wow,
seen
really?
bits and pieces of it on TV and thought that I had seen the whole thing, but I thought the
Um,
movie ended with Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio getting revived by the aliens, which didn't happen, and then the movie
no.
ended.
The
So I
hell?
was like, this is still going? Now let's talk about that for a moment. I'm gonna beat the shit out of you. Oh, I'm alive now. Thank you. What a weird movie. And I guess it's reminiscent of what was going on the set. I read the Wikipedia a little bit, and apparently there was never a day where they got through a single scene.
Really?
Ed Harris and Mary Elizabeth Mastrantonio have publicly disowned the film and will not talk about it.
Really?
I guess it was some really
Tough
shitty
shooting?
filming going on. There was some, I guess people practically almost drowned a couple times, and
Well, I
safety
mean,
was weird, and
it's
yeah,
it's
it's like,
like you
oh my
talked about. I
god,
mean, he went practical effects with this stuff. I mean, he
yeah,
stuck these actors underwater a lot of times, and I mean that watching Ed Harris swim from the when
yeah,
he has to swim from one latch to the other because he's trying to get to Michael Bean's character to stop him from launching the nuke. That's
mm-hmm.
a long fucking swim, and I'm like, where is your like? I know there's a safety diver off behind camera with a mask, but still,
Yeah,
that's I mean that's an holy crap! And watching her as she's
mm-hmm.
uh when they decide that she's the one that should drown and be resuscitated, there's that shot right at this from the side of her face where the water's just, I mean, there's an inch of
Just
air, and
uncomfortable.
she's screaming and talking about how this was a bad idea, and I'm just like, what's the safety of this look like? I'm trying to picture behind the camera and think like, how are they ensuring her safety? Because I just can't imagine that there's 100%
Yeah,
foolproof plan with redundancies to keep her alive. It was risky.
yeah.
It looked
Apparently, it was
super
pretty
risky,
fucking brutal.
you know. But
Hmm.
to me, that's kind of what makes the film. The film is a super risky film, and it's that you're constantly reminded of the danger that they're under. Like,
Hmm.
I mean, at any, it's like that submersible that went down last year, right? Just it
Mm,
went down and just imploded, and all those people were
yeah, I
gone in a
couldn't help but
second.
thinking about that. Yeah.
Yeah, same here. And it's the same thing where it's like, man, the wrong thing happens down there, and blam. And it's like, of course, that's how Michael Bean's character goes,
Hmm.
you know. And I think this is the last Michael Bean James Cameron.
It might
Uh,
be. Yeah.
I don't remember seeing him in anything else that was a Cameron movie from that point.
So it brings me to this point where, and have not seen the longer version, but apparently he had to bring in a movie that was 2 hours and 14 minutes before credits, I think it was, because this was the days where you had to pack in that extra showing.
Yep.
And when he did that 3 hour version, he added in a bunch of stuff that apparently makes things flow smoother and you get to know a little bit more character.
Yeah.
And I'm
Yes.
wondering, does that version actually do that? Because I feel the short version was kind of disjointed, like it was a scene would go to another scene to another,
Uh huh.
and I'm like,
Uh
it's because they're pushing the envelope, and it's still the '80s, and you have tropes from the '80s that don't age well to now, to where it's like, I'm a trained professional, I'm going underwater, I'm freaking the fuck out, man. You shouldn't be freaking out. You do this for a living. You don't know the size of your pack. It hits the fucking. But anyways, these are just little things.
huh.
But it just felt like from scene to scene, it felt like it was almost rushed or disjointed. And I'm wondering, does the longer version correct that feel, that flow?
I haven't seen it in a while, but from what I remember, the cast was introduced in a sort of a. You've seen Armageddon, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know how they
Oh,
introduce
another
the
movie that
cat.
wouldn't exist without this. Yeah.
Yeah, completely. But you know how they introduce the cast in like Rockhound and blah 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 and so, and that's kind of what he does. Where
Okay, because I felt like
like
we didn't really get to
there's a
know any of these people. Yeah.
there's a you know when Michael Bean is in the submersible and the Sony starts playing and he smashes it with his elbow.
Yes.
Okay, so that's, I think that's a joke because earlier on in the uncut version, uh, I can't remember her name. One Night, the woman,
Oh,
the
that's
woman who
right.
drives, she sings like an entire song, like they're all working, like they're all working out in the field doing whatever, and they're like, "Come on, One Night, sing the song," and she's like, "No, guys, pay," you know. And so they kind of introduce each of them through that
Uh,
song, and them all enjoying her singing, and there's like a whole bit there, and so there's a lot more character building in that
hmm.
respect early on to kind of give you an idea of who these people are and what's going on.
So things make. I'm gathering things make a little bit more sense, but the movie's just a little bit more bloated,
Right,
which
exactly.
leads to the tidal wave ending, which I read
Right,
about, where it's like, I feel like in the shortened version, you get the idea the aliens are like, hey, quit fucking around. But in the
right.
long version, you get this whole extended, here's a fifth ending of the movie now,
Hmm.
where
Yeah, I
we're
haven't
going to
seen it in
destroy
so long. I
everything,
can just
but we're
barely
not going to
remember that.
destroy everything.
Right, right.
And a coworker pointed out to me that during that tidal wave scene, somebody runs up to somebody on the beach and pulls their pants down. And he showed me the part. I'm like, oh my god, it's the full moon. The dude's
Oh
like,
goodness.
oh, and they just left it. So if you do watch that version, it's in the lower left hand corner, and you will get a.
I swear that that's happened in more than one movie.
So
Um,
when the 4K disc of this comes out in March,
I'm
I might watch the 3 hour version again just to see the
yeah,
difference at that
I'm
point.
I'm really looking forward to the 4K version because it's going to have updated graphics, and the special effects in this were just a little.
It's ahead of itself,
It's well,
right?
and it's just a little date. Like the graphics were really good, but they were meant for the. Again,
Yeah.
we've talked about the opacity of the screen and how it helps you sell an effect because
Hmm.
you're not all the light that's hitting the screen isn't bouncing back to your eye. You lose about 20 or 30% of it. in that helps kind of sell some special effects. And when you transfer them to VHS, VHS is still vague enough.
Yeah.
It's not 480. So once you get to 480 and 720 and 1080, that stuff just
Mm-hmm.
doesn't look right.
Because
And so
we were
he's got to
watching.
he's got to go back and fix that stuff.
Yeah, we were watching the DVD from 20 years ago on a
Hmm.
modern TV.
Yeah, and
It
it
seems
just doesn't look right.
murky.
Even then, it did. Even on DVD, it was just kind of like,
Yeah, the colors are all right, but it's just too dark.
hmm
You need a
it's
little
too
more
dark, and the
detail.
effects are just a little. You can kind of see through it just a little bit.
Mm-hmm. He does have an obsession with those mech suits,
Yeah,
James Cameron.
yeah, he does. He does. So the rat that they do the breathing the fluid with,
Oh yeah, it's real.
that's real. That's totally real. That
Yeah, crazy,
technology's
huh?
that technology's real. I don't think that I've never heard of it being used by humans, but I know
No,
that
according to Wiki, it's never happened. So.
yeah, that technology exists. They did it to that rat. That was a real thing with that rat, which is pretty freaking crazy all on its own.
Mm-hmm. So speaking of those '80s tropes, and I know this would have played better for me in that decade, but now I'm so far removed from it that I can't help but see the weird parts of it that have aged, where it's the whole. Not to even mention the alarm's going off. I'm running this way. I'm swinging on the pole perfectly this way to go to this part to run down here. I'm like, this is so. I know it's hyper movie realism, but oh, you're gonna want to put that fire out and run over here. Blah blah. It's like, oh my god, it's so utterly rehearsed, but that is of its time. But you get these characters that's kind of like, I'm an expert in my field and I'm going to do what I want. It's almost like it's still these sci-fi movies of the 50s in a way. It's kind of the tropes of it. It's like, oh, what's this woman doing? She can't know what to do. And then it turns out they really didn't know what they were doing, which is kind of funny. I mean, I
Hmm.
enjoy the movie. It's a weird ass movie, but there's some things, elements like that of its time where I'm just like, oh my God,
Uh,
it's still
yeah,
89. It's
yeah,
still,
totally.
that's how you made movies then. The
Wait, I mean,
blockbusters had
I mean,
that
oh, good,
flow
Queen
to it,
Bitch
that
of the
feel.
Universe. They call her a bitch several times in the
Hmm.
movie, and I mean, she's very hard to deal with. That's for sure. I mean, but you could point to that as some old school misogyny if you wanted to.
Well, it's not even so much that I don't even, it doesn't bother me because I know it's the '80s. They're telling this story about, it wouldn't be realistic at all if these undersea miners didn't have a little bit of,
A little bit of that,
wolf
yeah,
whistling
yeah.
construction site thing. But it's so funny how the over the top every characteristic,
Hmm.
even by the time
Well,
you get to movies like Armageddon or like Twister, wouldn't
mhm,
exist without this either. They've toned it down a little bit for the '90s, but it's still those
mhm,
type of I'm this guy and I do this and I'm gonna run over here and blah blah
yeah.
blah. And it's like there's
Well,
no element of realism to it all. But in the '80s, we we were more attuned to that type of thing. We wanted that in our entertainment. We expected
Cameron
it.
did that with Aliens. Where
That one
just
seems more subdued to me, though.
it was, but it's the same thing where he's introducing the guys who handle the heavy weapons and the guys who
True.
that type of thing, and introducing the squad as they get out of the sleeping pods and that type of thing.
I feel like
And
he did it a little better in that one. Like I
I
knew who
agree.
everybody was.
Yeah, I
I got a
agree.
feel for them. I cared about the characters a little more.
Hmm.
There's
Hmm.
too many characters. I don't really know who everybody is or care about them until at which point dude
Right,
loses his mind and tries
right.
to. And it's like, oh, now that was all set up. That was all slow burn to. And I do appreciate the long filmmaking. We don't get that as much anymore. Everybody tries to get right to the point. So that's why
Yeah.
I'm curious about the longer version. Maybe that'll work
Hmm.
better for me.
I feel like this movie is a movie like if you like it, you probably want the longer version because you
Hmm.
want a little more explanation about what's going on and who people are and how things happened, and you'll get that with that longer version. If you're just like, this movie isn't really great, you're like, yeah, that 2 hour and 14 minute version is just fine. Don't fuck with it. It's just fine. Um, I
Yeah.
I happen to think it's for me, it's probably one of my favorite Cameron movies because it's in between him going from like Terminator 2, Aliens into Avatar, Titanic, that type of shit,
Mm-hmm.
and you get this in between movie, and I feel like this in between movie is really just about his fascination with deep sea,
Oh
and
yeah.
the I he built this submarine that went down the deepest that anyone's ever. He holds the world record for going the deepest into the ocean anyone's ever been. And he helps with engineers build this thing himself. He's fascinated by that stuff, and I feel like the Abyss is kind of the culmination of that.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a pretty decent story. He just tends to, he as a filmmaker, he later on in life he tends to try to put these themes into his films where it's just like, dude, just make the movie. Like
Ah.
we'll pull whatever theme we need to out of what you're saying, but I don't need you to hammer home that
Mm-hmm.
nature and the trees are going to save us in Avatar, or that we got to stop fucking with the deep sea and drilling in the abyss, or we're going
Mm-hmm.
to awaken something that's going to come get us, that type of stuff. Like, it's you can just do the story and I'll just infer from it. I don't need you to put those themes so
That's
right
why I
in my
feel like a
face.
shorter ending might work better for me because instead of having an extra 15 minutes or whatever it is, where now we're going to send a tidal wave to destroy all you fuckers to, we'll just save you, but do better next time. I get the
Hmm.
subtext of it without getting hit over the head for a half hour, is my guess.
Yeah,
But he's kind
yeah,
of like George Lucas in that way, where it's like, the story's there, but I'm here to push the medium. This
right.
is more of a resume pick of, oh, you can do this now. Okay, well, it'll be interesting when they put that to use in a movie that has a really strong story. But you
Right,
have to,
right.
there's these movies that, you know, you watch it and you go, well, I've never seen that before, you know.
If he had made this movie in 2020, it would look completely different
Oh, yeah. It would
because
be the way of water, right?
yeah, he just wouldn't be doing the underwater shit that he tried to do because he had to do the stuff he had to do because practical effects.
Oh,
He
yeah.
was limited by what he could do, right? So he he goes down there and he shoves his actors under 200 feet of water, and he 50 feet of water, and he puts their lives on the line, which is just insane.
Mm-hmm.
But he pulls it off. He doesn't kill anybody. Um, got close from what we've heard, but
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a technological feat, but it's also kind of a bit of hubris where it's like, dude, maybe that's one you put on the shelves and say, I'll wait. Jurassic Park came out and it's doing pretty good and it's got these great effects. Maybe I wait a bit and see how these effects
Mm-hmm.
go. And he did, of course. He goes into Avatar and starts, pioneers a bunch of 3D filming technology and that type of thing. So I'd be interested to see him do the Abyss now in 3D the way he shot
Oh,
Avatar.
yeah.
Jesus, that'd be an amazing movie.
So it's kind of like his own Apocalypse Now in a way, where it's just
Yeah,
insane production and he
yeah,
finally got it done, and it's good, but it's fucking weird.
fucking weird. Yeah, my favorite thing about the film is a very secret thing, and it's just for me, and that is that it has a tie to Vision Quest.
Oh,
Um, which is is a movie near and dear to my heart.
and
So,
also on the '80s list, I believe.
oh, that'll be coming up at some point.
The Fable.
Um, So with a fabled '80s list, you make it out to be this big thing, and it's not. It's just me
It's just a list of '71
making a
movies from
stupid
the
list.
'80s, but
Yeah. Um, but anyway, so in Vision Quest, Matthew Modine's character, he works with a guy who's a cook, and the cook eventually takes the night off to see him wrestle in the big finale, and the cook basically is kind of like his Merlin. He
mm-hmm.
gives him advice and kind of keeps him on the path and tells him to quit screwing around and focus and blah blah blah. And that dude is also in the Abyss. He's the
Oh,
his name is Sonny. He plays Sonny, the guy who's his big moment, I guess, is when he's frantically calling the top surface and they tell him to quit because there's nobody that's going to answer. And he keeps going deep core, come back, that type of thing. But he's all throughout the movie. He's one of the main uh, oil rig people in there. But it was just like,
oh,
oh man, that's cool to see. Right on. Like 10, 13 years later, here he is in another movie. Sweet.
right. I think this is the only movie I've ever seen where the people know they're running out of air. Nobody cares. Right? It's not a plot point. It's like we're not even going to start to worry about it until, and that was the only part where I'm like, see, now these are the professionals, not like that guy who lost his shit in the suit early on and he panicked.
Right.
It's like, dude, what are
Right.
you even doing down here?
Yeah.
Panicking like that. Well, I saw an
Yep.
alien. And if you saw an alien, you'd lose your shit too. Okay,
He
okay.
said an angel. I saw an angel. I thought I was
Oh,
dead. Yeah, I thought I was dead because I saw an angel.
oh, so it's like that Blink 182 lead singer, the aliens and airwaves, and he's chasing UFOs around in real life,
It
some shit. It all ties together, people.
all
Does
comes
it?
together, people. Marty's making those weird associations again, guys.
Right.
Just
We're
go with it.
grasping for straws here.
Just go with it. Just go with it.
So yeah, like I said, the pacing was odd because the transitions from scene to scene just felt
Mm-hmm.
bizarre. It was like, and now we're here, and now we're
Mm-hmm.
here. But like
Yeah.
I mentioned, I think that might have to do with the you have to
Yeah.
trim your movie down so we
Yeah.
can fit it into this 214.
It's beautifully shot. It looks great.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you get a Chris Elliott
Oh yeah.
cameo in there.
Mm-hmm.
Um, you also get the lead doctor from Scrubs is in it.
Oh,
So
that's
you
right.
get some fun cameos in there.
Yeah, I guess the tidal wave effect wasn't complete in time either, so they finished that in like '92 when they did that, or '93 or whatever it was. They put out that special edition, so that was
Yeah,
another reason to put out the
yeah,
shorter version.
yeah.
And now,
I'm just dying for a good new copy of that.
yeah, I'm not sure if I read it right. I know there's a 4K of the theatrical, but I'm not sure if there's a 4K of the special. But you would think there would be one of each. I don't know. I guess we'll find out when it comes
I'll
out.
take whatever I can get on that.
Right.
Honestly,
So now the ending of Titanic makes a lot more sense to me. Because as a filmmaker, you don't want to make the same movie twice, right? And so obviously Jack dies because Lenz lives. I mean, if everybody in the Abyss made it out of there alive, well, of course in Titanic I got to kill some people.
sure.
I got to drown in this one. Nobody drowned in the other. Oh shit, the drowning sticks in Titanic, and that was the bigger hit.
Well, and it's also been a 30-year argument about whether or not that chick had any actual room on that damn piece of
Mm-hmm.
furniture to let him
Right.
climb up, and the answer is yes, she did.
Oh yeah.
Yes, she did.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, she did.
And now for me, I think, oh, this is just as a filmmaker, nobody drowned in the other movie about water. Somebody's got to drown at the end of this one.
Yeah.
I'm like, well,
Well,
now
let's
it
see.
makes sense to me.
Yeah, saved him in this one, killed him in that one.
Exactly.
Boom,
You don't want to
bookends,
make the same
perfect.
movie.
Hell no.
And so now, remember when we said, hold on to that name, Nick Castle, from when we were talking about Dark Star? He was Michael Myers in Halloween 1. Well, guess who's the stunt coordinator in The Abyss? Dick
Nuh-uh.
Warlock.
Oh, Dick
Dick
Warlock,
Warlock,
really?
who played Michael Myers in Halloween 2.
Correct. And he's
So
also a very good friend of Nick Castle's.
yeah, we met him at Mad Monster this year. Uh, so what is the connection between John Carpenter and James Cameron? Well, it's called Escape from New York. James
Yeah,
Cameron was the art director on that
that's right.
film, and
That's
so it
right.
only makes sense that the crew start intermingling with each other at that point. And so we get Dick Warlock as the stunt coordinator of the Abyss, and he's also one of the people on the boat alongside Chris Elliott
Hmm.
in a small acting role. So when I saw that roll up, it was like, see, this is why I have to research every guest thoroughly before the convention, so I can have questions that I would like to ask now. But, mm-hmm.
That's hilarious. So interesting. So I've just popped onto IMDb for a second. Um, the end credits were shortened to run under 5 minutes in order to hit a target runtime and maximize daily showings. Doing
Mm-hmm.
so also made the crawl almost illegibly tiny and fast. The credits on the extended version were almost 10 minutes with a bigger and slower crawl and extended and alternate music.
Wow.
Yeah, so several video releases of the theatrical on Laserdisc and DVD actually use the newer credits. So they are not entirely faithful. Wow, interesting. So, what'd you think overall? Did you come up with a rating?
I mean, it was interesting to realized that I had truly never seen this film all the way through before. And I guess that's going to happen more than once occasionally on this pod, you know. And
Hmm.
so it changed my
Change your opinion?
perception of it a little bit. You know,
Interesting.
looking up on Wikipedia and seeing when this movie was made. This movie was shot between August and December of 1988. So when we met, me and Cliff, the host of this podcast, we met while they were
Yes.
shooting this
Yes,
movie.
sir.
And that is pretty bizarre to me to think that they're in those water tanks while we're sitting in that Spanish class. It's very strange, man. It's very strange to think about all the events like that. I'm going to just for the weirdness of this movie, for its close encounters under the sea. It's 2.5 stars.
So let me ask you this: what was your perception before when you thought you'd seen all of it, and what was your perception after you'd seen all of it? Just briefly between the two, what was the change?
I thought it was my memory. It was a little more dull, and this time I was like, "Oh, there's a little more to it this time." And because I
Hmm.
realized there was probably a good 45 minutes I didn't see on the movie channel in between whatever other movie, or
Hmm.
so I enjoyed it more than my scant memory of watching it in 90 or 91
Hmm.
pieces of it anyway.
Interesting.
Just
Well,
weird how that got past me.
for me, it's a solid 3.5.
Oh,
I would watch it over Titanic. I would watch it
yeah.
over. I would watch it probably over the original Terminator. I would watch it over Avatar or
Yeah,
Avatar:
yeah.
Way of Water.
Never
Um,
saw that.
for me, I've seen them both, and
What
they're
about True?
fine.
What about
You
True
know,
Lies? What do you think about?
I'd watch it over True Lies
Yeah,
any day of the week.
yeah. I
You
think
know, I
I'm
mean,
probably there with you on all that. Yeah.
Avatar is Dances with Smurfs. I've said that before. That's
Hmm.
just Dances with Wolves with blue people. That's all that is. Put on an alien world. It's the same damn thing.
Yeah, I doubt we'll be covering Avatar anytime soon, unless you spring it on me. I don't have any intentions of
I No,
doing
but
that.
anyway, so looking at his catalog, to me,
Yeah, it's
this is one
enough.
of his more rewatchable movies. For me, one of the ones I would. Aliens is his most for me is his most rewatchable movie.
Yeah, yeah,
T2 is great.
yeah,
Terminator is great.
yeah.
But once we get down to Terminator, I'm like Terminator in the Abyss. They
Hmm.
both kind of have that same draw for me.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. Terminator's
I'm not.
just more of a slasher movie anyway.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
It's
And
good,
and,
but
and
it's more
go watch.
simplified.
I'll. You know what? We'll watch Terminator here eventually. It's not what everybody remembers it to be.
Yeah,
It's not.
exactly.
T2 is what everybody remembers Terminator to
Right.
be.
Hmm.
Yes, straight up. Anyway, so not shitting on Terminator or Cameron at all. They're great movies,
No, you're
but
just
for
doing the ranking.
but for me, 3.5 Abyss
Nice.
all day long. Yep,
Out of the five.
out of the five. Yep, 3.5 out of the five. Yep,
Cool.
yep. Don't at me, as they say, if you're mad at me. Haha.
Wow.
So I guess that takes us to picking a new movie.
Takes us to picking a new movie. A little
Mm-hmm.
peeling the curtain back. We didn't record one last week. You wouldn't know that by hearing. So it changes what mine would have been because I have to now pivot
He's on
to
some sort of weird schedule.
my next
Yeah.
schedule. There's a schedule of maybe three or four things, and they keep getting moved around.
I'm
But,
teasing you.
but beyond that, it's not like I originally planned scheduled for the next year. No, not even close to that. But
That's hilarious.
you get to say your pick first this time.
Okay, so I just came across this. I'm kind of it really sparked a lot of '80s memories for me, so I'm going to give it to you. I'm going to give it to you. The Manhattan Project.
Oh, we're going right into that one.
Going right into that one.
You know,
Hmm.
I used to watch that one on cable quite a bit. Haven't seen it in a
Same here.
long time.
Same here. Exactly. Same here. And from what I remember as a kid, I used to enjoy it quite a bit.
Oh yeah, I'd watch it
So,
every time it was on. It
yep.
lives in my mind with Real Genius,
Uh huh.
Science
Uh
Project,
huh.
all
I
of
feel
those.
like I feel like it's the unknown version of My Science Project and Real Genius. It's the untalked about little brother of those, where
Mhm.
it just kind of is sitting in the background waving, but nobody's really paying
Mhm.
attention to it. So I'm gonna go with the Manhattan Project.
Explorers, War
Yeah,
Games.
exactly.
What year is Manhattan Project? 85?
86.
86. Ah, the crazy year of 1986.
Hmm.
Well, my pick is also from that decade of the 80s.
All right.
Uh, because as the time we're recording this, we're getting close to New Year's here. So this is a movie that is set on New Year's. It is from 1983, a little known movie called Get Crazy. It has Daniel Stern and Malcolm McDowell. It's from the director of Rock and Roll High School. And there's also some familiar faces in it, like Lee Ving and people that you will notice. And it'd be interesting to see what you think of this weird, maybe overly coke fueled mess from the early '80s. But it's
Oh,
New
okay.
Year's. New
My
Year's.
first Coke '80s movie, so we can talk about that too. Get Crazy. I
Get
think I've
crazy.
seen that. Um, it sounds very familiar. It's I'm for
Fell out
some
of
reason
print.
I'm picturing the box set in my head, and it's like somebody on a
Mm-hmm.
guitar or something with a
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah. Okay, I just checked IMDb. Okay, all right, yeah. So yeah, I've seen it. It's just been forever, so that'll
Mm-hmm.
be an interesting one to
Yeah.
see.
Fell out of print because home video rights and music. It was only
Hmm.
licensed for the theater, and so years later, they finally a Blu-ray of it came out a few years ago. But I have an old VHS copy that I've been watching.
All right, Get
So
Crazy
we'll
it
see what
is.
that's like.
Well, is that a music-based movie too?
In a way, I guess you would say, yeah,
Well,
there's quite a bit of
fucking
music in
sweet. Even better. You know how I love those.
it. Yeah.
Okay, right on. Well, then there you have it, folks. It'll be the Manhattan. It'll be an '80s battle: the
Yeah.
Manhattan Project versus Get Crazy.
Yes. More of that Cold War love next time.
Next time on Talking Pondo.
Yes.
All right, Marty. See you then.
Right on.
Later, buddy.